Hello, majors. This is Unit 4, Day 4 notes. We are going to be looking at more of congruent figures, congruent triangles. Before, what we said is we have gone over congruency statements. When we're talking about a triangle, everything in this triangle has to be congruent to something in this triangle in order to make sure that they're congruent. So let's look at this. Do you see this bottom triangle, HJK? Well, the small side is JK. It has one congruency mark, one dash. So it is congruent to the top triangle, small side, HI. We know that the bigger leg, IK, has two congruency marks. So that is congruent to the bigger leg, JK. Sorry, JH. And then the biggest side, the hypotenuse, HK, we know that they're congruent just because they're overlapping. They're touching each other. So now we need to look at the angles. They're congruent. We know that this is, I'm going to do red. So this is a 90-degree angle, which is congruent to this 90-degree angle. And we know that this angle has one congruency mark is equal to this angle that has one congruency mark. Also, we know that this third angle is congruent to this third angle by the third angle theorem. So since all of the sides we know are congruent and all of the angles we know are congruent, we know that these two triangles are congruent. So it is enough information to prove that these two triangles are congruent. So we can write our congruency statement. It says write the congruency statement. Remember that order matters. So that we have to put it in the correct order. The first triangle, it doesn't matter which one you start with. I'm going to start with the bottom triangle. And I'm going to start with this triangle right here. And I can put it in any order I want. Okay, but other order is going to matter. The next triangle is going to matter. I'm going to say triangle. This is the triangle symbol. H, J, K. And then the congruency symbol to triangle. And then the next order does matter. So the triangle, I started with H. H has the pink congruency mark. So on this top triangle, the one with the pink congruency mark is K. So I have to start with K. My second one was J, and J is the one that has the 90-degree angle, and the one in the top triangle that has a 90-degree angle is I. And so I went to K, from K to I, so I know the last one has to be H. So that order does matter. The second one, we have these are maybe the top triangle, and then the bottom, the whole triangle. This is the whole triangle. They're not congruent. They don't even look congruent because the purple triangle is much smaller than the green triangle. It's inside the green triangle. Congruent means that the angles and the side lengths are equal, but they're not going to be equal. Also, we need to know that they're telling us right here, they're trying to trick us. They're telling us that these are parallel lines. And if you see this as your transversal, then we know that these two angles are equal, right? And if you had picked this as your transversal, then these two angles would be equal because they're corresponding angles. And we know that this angle is congruent to itself. They're both sharing it. So all the angles are equal, but angle, angle, angle is not a congruency statement. So that does not prove that my triangles are congruent. Let's look at this one. So these are my parallel lines. And if we have these, they're parallel because they have little arrows. If we have this as our transversal, then these are alternating interior angles, which are congruent. And if this one is my transversal, then these alternating interior angles are congruent. And then I know for sure that these angles are congruent because they're vertical angles, but I'm not given any of the side lengths are congruent. we're given that these are parallel, but that doesn't mean that they're equal. So angle, 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 even though we know all three angles are congruent, that's not enough to prove that the triangles are congruent. So we've got to say no again. The third one I want you guys to try to do. Can you prove to me that all three angles and all three sides are congruent? We'll check it tomorrow. It says we know that for a triangle to be congruent, all corresponding sides and corresponding angles must be congruent. Before we had to prove every single one. However, now I'm going to teach you a couple of shortcuts. We have 5 shortcuts. The first one is the side, side, side congruency. This is very important. If you have colors, please highlight it. This is going to be something you want to highlight. Side, side, side congruency. If you can prove that the corresponding sides, all three sides, are congruent, then the triangles will be congruent, okay? In the congruency statement, we're going to practice this. Remember, the order matters. So the first triangle they did for you, they want you to go from A to B to C. And we're going to decipher this. So A is the first one. And that one is in between, well, let's label our sides. So BC is going to be red. That has one congruency mark. And so the one with one congruency mark is going to be red. AC is going to be green. That has 2 congruency marks. So the one with 2 congruency marks is going to be green. And then the third one, AB has 3 congruency marks, so the one with 3 congruency marks is going to be purple. Okay, so they want us to start with A, right? They started with A, and that is the one between 3 congruency marks and 2 congruency marks, or the one between the purple and the green. So the one between the purple and the green is R. So we have to start with R. That does matter. Put a triangle, and then R. And then they went to B. B is the one between 3 congruency marks, 1, 2, 3, and then 1 congruency mark, or purple and red. The one between purple and red is H, so R to H, and then of course T is the only one left. So that is the order that we have to put our second triangle in, and we're saying that these 2 triangles are congruent. I don't know anything about the angles, but I know all 3 sides are congruent, therefore my 2 triangles have to be congruent. I'm going to show you guys how to do this in a proof. It doesn't actually have anything right here that says given. Usually we'll be given something, and then we're trying to prove this, but all my given information is already plugged into the triangle form, into the 2 triangles for me. We're trying to prove that they're congruent by side, side, side similarity, or side, side, side congruence. So we're going to say, well, we know that AD is congruent to BC, and that reason is going to be given. It's plugged into my triangle for me. So I'm going to say side AD with a line above it is congruent to side BC with a line above it. And the reason is going to be because it's given. They wrote it in there for us. You can see something else that's given. Side AB and side DC are congruent. So we have side AB is congruent to side DC. And that reason is also given. They plugged it into it for us. Now, whenever our triangles are overlapping, do you guys see that this side in the middle, they're overlapping, they're both using this side? We can put 1, 2, 3 congruency marks right there. And both triangles are using that side, so it's the same side. DB is congruent to DB, put a line above it. And we know this, whenever we repeat our information, DB is repeated DB, then that's always going to be the reflexive property. Think about it as you're looking at yourself in the reflection. That's going to be just a repeat of yourself. This is the reflexive property. We'll use this a lot. So we now know that our 2 triangles are congruent. What I'm trying to prove is going to go down here in number 4. And my 2 triangles are congruent. The order matters, so I have to write it in there just like they have it in there, and it's triangle. Sorry, I need to add a little bit. A, B, D is congruent to triangle, and then same order, guys, CDB, CDB. And the reason I know that they're congruent is because all three, we've just proven that 1, 2, 3 sides are congruent. So this is called the side, 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 right here. Side, side, side congruence. Side, side, side congruence. Side, side, side postulate. Okay, guys, go ahead and flip your paper over. Well, I want to go over real quick before we go over the next one, included angle and included side. So if A is an included angle, right here, this is A, it's included between the two sides. The A is included between AB and AC. You guys see the A's in between those. Also, we have included sides are between two angles. So RS is this side right here, and that is included between angle R and S. So S and R. So that does really matter. Included. This is also on a word wall at the back of the room. So we have another congruence, and it's called side angle side. But it has to be the angle in between the two sides. So the angle has to be between the two sides. Okay, it's very important. So we have this side has two congruency marks, is congruent to this side. This side has one congruency mark, is congruent to this side, but it has to be the angle in between them. So this is the only angle in between them, is congruent to this angle in between them. Then we know by the side angle side postulate that they are congruent. Let's do our congruency statement. So they're starting with M. So I have to start with the one that is in between two, or the blue side and the side I didn't touch. So the blue side and the side I didn't touch, it's going to start with R. And then they went to L, which is on the green side and the side I didn't touch. And R is on the green side and the side I didn't touch is S. And then we started at R, went to S, the last one has to be T. All right, I'm going to show you guys one more proof, and then that's it. We're just going to plug in what is given. We're given this side. Oops, I don't know what happened. This side, HI, has one congruency mark, is equal to this side, JK. So their two sides are congruent, so I'm going to write it in there. HI is congruent to JK, and the only reason I know that is because it tells me, they plug it in. So that is given. And they're giving me one more thing. We have this little arrow. These arrows means that our lines are parallel. So I'm also going to write in there HI is parallel to JK. And that's also given. They plugged it in there for us. So that's also given. However, when we have our parallel lines, and if we have maybe this transversal right here, we have alternating interior angles. We're going to use this theorem a lot. And so I can say that this angle right here, which remember we have to have 3 letters to name an angle. I can say angle HIJ, that's this purple angle, HIJ is congruent to angle, and then I'm going to use this angle right here, which is KJI, KJI. And I know that these two purple angles are congruent because they are alternating interior angles. So because the alternating interior angle theorem. And then we have one more thing that we know is congruent to itself because they're overlapping. They're sharing a common side. So they're sharing this side right here, this purple side right here, or this pink side right here. So I can say J to I is congruent to itself, J to I. And whenever we're saying something is congruent to itself, that is going to be the reflexive property. And so now I have, let me use my thing. I have this side is congruent to this side. This angle is congruent to this angle. And now I have this side is congruent to itself. So I know these two triangles, and I have to write it just like what I'm trying to prove. I have to just write it in there. Triangle HIJ is congruent to triangle KJI. And I know this because of side, angle, side postulate. All right, guys, we will do more practice on this and proofs when we get to class. Have a great